Welcome everybody to today's webinar, A Manager's Guide to Developing Trust and Synergy, presented by Vijay Verma. Vijay is one of the most senior presenters in this Procept's stable of talent. He's a well-known international author. He's written some of the best-selling books in the world on project management and team development and soft skills for managers. In addition, he's got a long history as a professor emeritus at the Tri-University Mason facility, which is a particle accelerator, I think, for doing particle research at the University of British Columbia in Canada. In addition, he is a PMI fellow, holds several degrees, is a fellow of the Project Management Association of Canada, and we're very lucky to have him here today. This is one of a series of webinars that we will be presenting throughout the year, roughly every 2 weeks. They are all being recorded and will eventually work their way up to YouTube so that people will be able to catch them there if they want to listen to it again. Now, for this particular live webinar, for the live attendees, not the video recording, but the live attendees, you have the opportunity of asking questions of the speaker. When you have a question, just type it in the chat window or the questions window. Those are both tabs on your user interface. If you see the orange arrow on the floating toolbar, if you click that, the control panel expands, and underneath that, you'll see the option for a questions tab and a chat tab. In there, you can actually type your questions so you don't forget them. Type them in at the moment you think of them, and then we will circle around later at the end of the webinar to address questions. In the meantime, we'll keep the lines muted. In the meantime, we'll keep the lines muted so that we don't have too many background noise distractions like the one I just did. And we can begin. Vijay, take it away.
Okay, you can see my PowerPoint?
We can.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon, those people who are on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, so this is a good morning for me. My name is Vijay Verma. I am from Vancouver, British Columbia, from Triumph, which is a Tri-University Mason facility located at the University of British Columbia. The title for today's webinar is A Manager's Guide to Developing Trust and Synergy. Actually, these are two most important things for any manager and even for the project managers and the leaders. Means how do you develop trust and how do you create synergy within your people or within your teams? That's very, very important. This is me. I have worked for over 39 years at Triumph. As Kevin said, it stands for Tri-University Mason Facility. It's a particle accelerator lab, just like CERN in Geneva, in Switzerland, Large Hadron Collider, which goes half of that is in France and half of that is in Switzerland. And Triumph is Canada's CERN. I have a passion on the human side of project management. I actually had written 3 books which were published by PMI, which is Organizing Projects for Success, Human Skills for the Project Manager, and the third one is Managing the Project Team, which actually won the David Cleland PMI Literature Award. I wrote most of these books with a very tough schedule in my life. Like I used to go to my study room to write the books at 10 o'clock at night after working with my children, putting them to bed, helping them with the schoolwork. And then I used to work until 3 o'clock in the morning. So my wife told me, no more books. But I have been trying to influence her in the last few years. So this is my 4th book, which came out, The Art of Positive Politics, A Key to Delivering Successful Project, which is published by Multimedia Publications, Inc. And you can contact Procept Associates if you want any copy of that one or from Amazon. So let's just get going on this one. The learning objectives for today's webinars are, I'll just give you a very quick model for achieving the most with trust and synergy. Then we'll talk about what is trust and what are different types of trust. What are the key dimensions and principles of trust? And then we'll talk about what managers and leaders do to gain trust. And then I'll just say 10 guidelines for enhancing trust. These are the ones that I came up with just as a cap and also for people to remember. And then we'll touch into synergy. Synergy is all about teamwork with an aim to create high performance teams. So we'll talk a little bit quickly about what's a team and a team building. All of you know this area quite a bit, so I may even skip through this quickly if I need to. Team development wheel, that is your 4 stages: forming, norming, storming, and performing. And then we'll talk about guidelines for developing effective teams and so on. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, and then we'll talk about the characteristics of high performance teams. So this is the model that I would say is to achieve the most from your people with the trust and synergy. In order to get the most from your people, the most important thing you need is the teamwork, leadership, and communication. So I did this diagram, which is also in my books of published by PMI. I had this diagram just as a triangle, and I showed it to my children because I used to just collaborate with them quite a bit as well. And my youngest daughter, who was 11 years old at the time, and she said, "Daddy, this is not an interesting diagram just with a triangle." Okay, I said, "What should I do?" She said, "Well, you should draw a wiggly line around it." I said, "How about if I draw a circle?" She said, "Yeah, that's not so bad. That looks a little better." But I said, how do I explain this?" And she said, "That's your problem, not mine." So then I thought about it and I said, oh my God, in order to get good teamwork, good leadership, good communication, but you also need to have a trust and respect for each other. When you have trust, you have a good teamwork. And if you have a trust with your people, people trust you as a leader, and then you can get the things done. And the communication becomes very easy as well. And same thing is with the respect, and the same thing is getting a commitment from people to have synergy. So what is trust? I would like you to just take a few seconds and write down your own definition of trust, what you think the trust is. And who do you trust, and why do you trust them? I'll just give you a couple of seconds for that, or a minute. Who do you trust and why? And what is trust to you? Hope everybody had some time to think about that one. So trust actually is a positive expectation or a belief that another person will not act opportunistically through words, actions, or decisions. So when I trust somebody, I have some positive expectations from that person, but I also at the same time think. So when I say positive expectation, when I trust somebody, I assume that they have a knowledge and familiarity about the other party. And opportunistic part means that refers to inherent risks and vulnerability in any trusting relationships that they will not take advantage of. So that is more related to faith, that they will not take advantage of me. I have a faith in them. That means I trust them. So these two words are very, very important. You have positive expectations from people whom you trust, and you also believe and have a faith that they will not take advantage of you. So trust is something that we are all looking for from others. Not trusting people is really living your life in fear and with suspicious all the time. That is not a good way to lead your life, in my opinion. But at the same time, you cannot trust everybody also. And I think that's where the dilemma is. But the manager is supposed to develop trust and synergy because of the advantages of trust that I'll talk about in this webinar as well. The foundation of trust is trustworthiness. You can't just tell people, trust me, trust me. You have to demonstrate that you are trustworthy. And you have to demonstrate that on a consistent basis, not just once or twice. Trust is time bound, whether people can trust you or you can trust people on a long-term basis and on a short-term basis. Trust is a relationship contract. So when you have interacting with people, you have a relationship contract, but there is always an implied risk. For example, I ask you for a pencil. That's very easy. You will give it to me. Now I ask you for your car keys and a room key. Then you will think a little bit about it. Okay? Because, if I give you the keys, am I going to see my car back again? Am I going to see my car in a good shape without any accidents or anything like that? So there is a implied risk. Implies also specific expectations that you will meet my expectations when I trust you. So build trust, as I said, you should be trustworthy. And the question you should ask yourself is that whether you're trustworthy or not, can people take risk on you? If they are taking risk on you, can they do that? That means you are trustworthy. And are you delivering the expectations on an ongoing basis? Yes, I think these are very, very important. And about the expectations, the more you do this, in other words, more times and a more consistent basis, you're able to deliver expectations on a consistent basis, higher becomes the trust. I think that's very, very important to think about it. So let's talk a little bit more about trust. Trust involves making oneself vulnerable. So when you're trusting somebody, you're making yourself vulnerable, because when you especially disclose intimate information, that it will not be used against you, and you rely on another's promises, what they're telling you that they will do, okay, for you, as well as with the information. So when we trust others, implied risk meant, remember I said that before, it was an implied risk, is that you may face sometimes disappointment or feelings that you have been taking advantage of. There are two sides of trust. As I said before, should you trust or should you not trust? Well, the positive side of trust, and that's why the managers need to develop trust and synergy among their people, because it improves relationships, it makes communication easy, it increases productivity and creativity, because you are showing confidence in them as well and the faith. But the negative side of trust is, as I said before, people can take advantage of you and obstruct your progress. And that happens to all of us in our lives. Sometimes it has happened that somebody has cheated you in business or somebody has really taken advantage of you. But my attitude in life is you should not necessarily stop trusting people, because otherwise you're living in a life of all the time suspicion and fear. Okay, so I think we'll talk a little bit about that, and maybe you'll ask some questions about that as well. This is a simple model that I developed and thought about it, that what are the main elements of trust? And I think it is hopes and faith. When you're trying to have a trusting relationship with somebody, the first thing you have is, well, okay, I like to trust this person. Then you know that what are your unexpected wishes or unforeseen wishes. And then you say, okay, let's trust this person and see how it goes. And if they meet your wishes, meet your expectations, and you experience those positive hopes and positive vibes as well, then you start having a faith in that person. That, oh my God, I can really rely on this person. And when you have experienced positive hopes over and over and over again, that means there's a history of experienced faith. That is when you trust people and the trust becomes stronger. So the more hopes are satisfied, faith becomes stronger, and then the trust becomes stronger. And then the interesting thing is, it is reciprocal. If you trust people, they also trust you, and it is returned as well. And then they're able to satisfy your hopes more and build your faith as well. Let me give you an example. You're trying to look for a financial advisor, and I'm just going through that in the last 2 weeks, because my financial advisor left, immigrated to US to be with his wife, and now I'm stuck to find a new financial advisor. So the important thing with that relationship is, are they meeting your hopes? Are they meeting your wishes of expected rate of return and the risk and so on when the market goes down? And when they have done that over a period of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you start having a faith in them and then trust on them. And then possibly you either give them more money and you also trust them that they can make the decision on behalf of you. And that's how it really goes. For a manager, for example, when you trust a manager, you give to your people certain tasks or assignment. You have certain expectations, how this task will be met, on time it will be done, with the good quality it will be done. And when that person has been doing it on a consistent basis, you start having a faith and a confidence in that person. And that is really when the trust is developed. And when I said reciprocal, then they trust you and then they return it back to you with more work. So they're ready to work harder even if the schedules are tight, they work harder and still deliver you the good result. But just remember, you do not receive trust from people beyond what you deliver. If you are not ready to satisfy their hopes and build faith, people will also not do that for you. So any questions on that one? You can think about that and we'll come back to it. These are the key dimensions or criteria of trust. 5 important criteria of trust is the biggest one is the integrity, which is honesty and truthfulness. And that's a part of your moral character. Actually, I will go through the other dimensions as well. This is the most important thing. People you trust have to have an integrity. Competence, they have to have the technical and interpersonal knowledge and skills. You believe that. Then the consistency, that's very important. When you trust in a trusting relationships, you want to make sure that they're reliable, they're predictable, and they have a good judgment in handling situations. For managers especially, if there is an inconsistency between words and the actions, means they say something else and they mean something else, like they say they praise you by words, that great work, but they don't really give you the rewards after that or recognition after that in reality, that reduces trust. So the words are okay, but what you really do after that with those words, is there a consistency between the two or not? Loyalty, willingness to protect and help others, person save face. So that's your loyalty. So when you have trust in relationship, you're loyal to each other. It means you can depend on someone not to act opportunistically or take advantage of you. Openness, willingness to share ideas and information more freely. Okay, so these are the different types of trust in organizational relationships, and that is deterrence-based trust, that I would call very fragile. That is the one which is not even, I wouldn't even call it a trust actually, because that is what is based upon fear, threat, or coercion. Means you can still get the things done, if you want to call it positive expectations, okay, but what you will get is mostly resistance, maybe compliance at the most, because you have a lot of positional power, but you will hardly get their commitment, means that they'll be able to go 110% when you need them. Knowledge-based trust is what you earn. It's a behavioral predictability that comes from the history of interactions. There's a good understanding and information about others, develops over time, and inconsistent behavior is acceptable. So sometimes somebody, if they did not do consistently what they used to do for you as a positive behavior, that doesn't mean that the trust could be broken. May not be. As long as you have open communication with them and you can ask them what happened, and if they can explain it adequately, then I don't think the trust will be broken. And then is identification based. Can I allow you to act for me? Can I trust you? Can I rely on you? And that is, if you have a good emotional connection between the parties, there's a mutual understanding of intentions, what they intend to do, what are their wants, what are their desires. And this is really very, very important, because the managers face this situation quite often, that when they're delegating the work to other people and really just letting them be their deputy, if you want to call it that way. So this is very, very important. And when you have that kind of a trust over a period of time, there's no need of monitoring that. Do we still have the trust or not? No, because the loyalty is unquestioned. Principles of trust. To better understand how trust and mistrust are created, mistrust drives out trust. So if you start concealing information, not being very open, or acting opportunistically, that's when you lose trust from the other person. Trust begets trust. In order to get trust, you have to exhibit trust to increase trust between the both parties. Trust can be regained sometimes, and I'll get back to that a little bit later on as well. Mistrusting leads to separation, miscommunication, and lack of cooperation. And trust increases cohesion. It really is like a glue which really holds people together. Okay, and the mistrust reduces productivity. If you really do not have trust among your people, people conceal information, people do a lot of finger pointing, doubting, and so on. So what managers and leaders do to gain trust? First thing they need to do is they need to build social capital. Social capital means the strong relationships to help organizations function smoothly. That is built on trust and allows better collaborations and successful negotiations. So if you have a good social capital, you can have good collaboration and successful negotiations. It increases team productivity and creativity. And so you should analyze the factors that destroy social capital. It's very, very important for managers to think about it. And one of the ways to destroy social capital is sometimes you try to do lots of re-engineering in your organization, means that you try to emphasize more on efficiencies rather than the network and the connections and so on. These times it's happening a lot in the organizations. Hoteling means that you do not have a permanent office space. People are really have the desk space available on a rotational basis, and that possibly will be coming out a lot after this pandemic, because people have been used to working virtually. And that when you have that, you do not have enough time that people can interact with each other and build those trusting relationships. Building team trust, which is a key to creating high performance teams. You need to work for others' interests, look at the big picture, be a team player, practice openness, and be fair and speak your feelings. That's very important. When you have a trusting relationships, you should be open enough and you should be bold enough to just share your feelings, whether you are angry, whether you are upset or anything like that. And when you talk about that one, as I said, and everybody can talk adequately, the trust will increase. Maintain confidence of others and be consistent in the values that guide your decision making. The way you make decisions as a manager, and people see what you say is what you do, you're walking your talk, and you're consistent in the values that you use, then they will keep continuously trust you. And the fostering collaboration by building trust and facilitating relationships. Let me just share with you a few facts about the trust from a survey, and this is in Canada, mostly from the Canadian organizations. This is a survey which was cited in by Zed Icicle, Building Public Trust in Canadian Organizations, preliminary findings done by the Conference Board of Canada in 2005. Possibly it is old, you can say, but things haven't changed too much. 21% of Canadians think that the CEOs were trustworthy or extremely trustworthy. So at least part of the people. 16% of the people surveyed think that the information conveyed by their CEOs and CFOs was credible. People were honest. But look at this one. 83% of people think that the corporate executives are likely to lie when making statements to news media to make themselves look good or whatever the circumstances are. And about politicians, 91% of the people think that the politicians are likely to lie when they're making statements to the news media as well. 80% agree that the distrust is growing, and we need to figure it out. Why is that so? And 87% people agree that people are less trusting these days than in the past. And I think I cannot speculate on the reasons, but one of them is that we are too busy in doing things rather than living things or experiencing things. So the interactions are less, the relationships are less, and people are just running without knowing where are they going. And I think that could be the reason. Okay. So let's just talk a little bit about if you are a manager or a leader, you have a project, you have a vision, how do I build support from your people? So this model is particularly based upon trust and agreement. In order to manage your stakeholders, you have to enhance trust and agreement. So agreement is the first thing. You explain to people certain job to do. You tell them how the job has to be done, what the criteria for success is, and so on. So you try to get their agreement, which is mutual understanding, harmony, and concurrence. But the main thing is now to get the results, can you trust them? Do you have confidence in them and the faith in them that the agreements that they made will be carried through indeed? Okay, so that's very, very important because any agreement that you make based on fear, threat, and coercion has a lower probability of being carried through. So this is a model that was developed by Peter Block, and based upon the dimensions of trust and agreement, you can divide people into 5 categories. First is your adversaries, low trust and low agreement. Then are your opponents, high trust and low agreement. Allies, high trust, high agreement. And the bedfellows is the low trust and high agreement. And these are your fence setters. So these adversaries are the ones which your chemistry and their chemistry just does not match. The trust level is low, agreement is low. You may think that, oh my God, the opponents look like adversaries. No, opponents you trust them more than you trust the adversaries. So the trust level is high. What does that mean? That they are positive devil's advocate. They are genuine. They really want you to progress. They really want you to have your plans and the strategic plans more sound, more logical, but they will challenge you to help you think about it and make corrections. And bedfellows are these yes people who say yes on your face. Agreement is high, but when they turn around, they do things differently. And the fence sitters, the trust level is still low, but the agreement keeps changing. So your aim is, as a manager and a leader, is to take as many people as you can, as many categories of stakeholders as your allies, because the more allies you have, better off you will be. So these are various strategies to deal with your stakeholders. I won't go into more details. It is something that I also talk about when I talk about power, influence, and politics workshops in more details. But allies or your mentors or your champions should be your allies. High trust, high agreement, and the only strategy there is, one of the very important one is involve them early in your projects so that they are aware of what's going on. You can discuss your strengths and weaknesses with them, and they're not going to take undue advantage of that at all or expose you. They must be thanked and cultivated. They have a certain amount of ego, so you must cultivate that relationship by thanking them. And opponents, as I said, are the devil's advocate. When they give you a suggestion or challenge you, which may not sound as a very polite way of doing things, because they may not know any polite way to do it. And generally, these are very, very intelligent people. So be positive and grateful for their challenges. Listen to them carefully, because they generally have a lot of knowledge behind what they are saying, and then prepare your answers. And then you have these bedfellows, yes people. Be assertive to your vision that this is what we want to do. See if they really agree with you. Be sincere in dealing with them. And if they do agree, capture that moment. Take a snapshot, and means use a third party and document it. And mostly you should volunteer to document it after the meeting. And then you can write an email and saying, thank you very much. It was a very productive meeting. And this is other items we have agreed upon. Remember, the person who has the pen has the power. So you say, This is what we agreed upon. And now you can actually put a little bit saying, okay, in order to really, as a next step, this is my suggested implementation plan. Even if it was really not discussed in details, you can suggest that. And then you can say at the bottom, I hope I got everything right. And please let me know if I missed out anything or got anything wrong. And I think that's a good way to do that. And then you send the email copy to them and to their boss so that they cannot come back and say, I did not agree with that. And same thing with fence sitters or politicians and bureaucrats. They just do not make decisions. They do not have confidence in making decisions. They keep on coming back. You go to them to ask for certain decisions, and they say, I want more data. I want more data. I want more analysis. You go with that, then they say, I want more, because they just do not have the confidence or they feel insecure to make decisions. With them, be patient and cautious. So someday if they agreed and the agreement is high, don't go out and celebrate and have a bottle of champagne, because be cautious. Use third party and document again. Okay. And to them, you may like to tell them what have you done for them lately. Everybody has a short memory, so you might like to remind them, because the agreement is unknown, and say that, look, 2 years ago when you were in trouble on a project, I did more than my share, and I came out and helped you, and this is about time you should really help me also, because I need it from you. Okay, so asking for reciprocation. And these are the adversaries. These are the people with your chemistry and their chemistry just does not match. As soon as you see them in the hallway, you feel like doing something to them, but you can't do it because it is illegal. So with these people, keep your cool, avoid them if necessary and possible, because it takes a lot of your effort and energy to deal with those people, and sometimes it may not be good for your guts, for your health. Most of the time when we deal with adversaries are happy and they are gone at the end of the day and having a beer, and you are the ones who goes home, talk to their wife, talk to their kids, and take it upon them, and so you are the one who is suffering. That's why it is important to keep calm and keep your cool. Carefully weigh your costs, benefits, and options. Acknowledge their position in a neutral way. That's very important. I mean, and I can come back to this neutral way if you have any questions. Analyze your actions. Maybe it is you who whispered in the ears of management 2 years ago against them, and now they are really taking back on you. Don't label people as adversaries too quickly. Okay? Think about it. Why are they acting the way they are acting? And if you did something wrong 2 years ago, it's a good time to come out and say sorry and say, Bob, I'm really sorry we were working on this project 2 years ago. I did not do as much or to help you out or cooperated as much as I should have done. I am sorry. Remember the rule in life, when you say sorry, I am sorry, period. You don't go and say, I am sorry, but you were wrong then and you're wrong now. No. These are the 10 guidelines for enhancing trust. Model the desirable level of trust. How much trust do you really think we want to have with each other? Walk the talk, as I said, demonstrate, do by examples, encourage business relationships and interactions, address questions to enhance trust. If somebody has any questions, doubts, address them, and early. Demonstrate genuine respect and consideration. Use win-win strategies. When you're trusting people, the idea is not to win and lose. The idea is to find out how you can both win. Okay, for example, you want a lot more, you want the tight schedule to be met by your people. That's fine, but when they do that often, you should really give them the proper rewards, sending them to a good training or a conference or whatever the case may be. So figure out a way to win-win. Support sensitive issues. People have certain sensitive issues, okay? And reward excellent performance and use positive reinforcement. Confront poor performance without raising defensiveness, because it should be done in a timely manner with a calmness and being objective. Be open about issues that affect team performance. So coming back to synergy quickly. Synergy, trust and synergy are vital for success in any organization. Synergy, in a way, I was thinking about that. Synergy means putting energies together, synchronizing energies of your people. And it is achieved when things work together harmoniously. And I love this, what Stephen Covey said, that synergy is better than my way or your way, it is our way. In other words, let's put our heads together and come up with a more innovative and creative ideas. And this is the project team. You know this definition is an energetic group of people who are committed to achieving common objectives and who work interdependently. So the three main words that I like to put in the team and emphasize that the objectives they have are common. They work interdependently, that my output is dependent upon what your input, what your output is, my output is dependent upon that. And we are all committed to produce high quality results. And these are the 10 things that the project team needs to know when they're working in order to get the synergy. What are our objectives? Why are we doing it? What is the leader's style? What role will they perform? What are the hindering forces? What is the impact of project on my career? What are the rewards? What are the rules of road to be followed? How the decision will be made? Will they be made more participatively, or are they going to be just made in an autocratic manner? And what is the performance evaluation and documentation? So team building is a process of transforming a group of individuals with different needs, backgrounds, and expertise into an integrated and effective unit. So this is really what important things are for team building. It's an integrated and it is effective. Team building is a process of change. You're changing things all the time. Okay, so that's really how it goes. It is essential for multidisciplinary programs or projects. It's a good management style, and it's an ongoing process to evaluate noticeable changing in the performance levels, changing energy levels. So when you have good team, you can figure these out very quickly, and what are the verbal and non-verbal clues you're getting from your team members in terms of their satisfaction or dissatisfaction. I won't spend too much time on that. You all know this a lot, but this is a team development wheel that people go through these stages of forming, storming, norming, and performing. And you can see that the trust level is when it is developed, when people are reaching to the performing stage. So the manager's aim should be to get people through these 4 stages and get them to the performing stage as early as possible, but do not rush people. Because if you take people from here, they are here, and you took them there too quickly, they will bring you back to this one all the time. Okay? You're saying, let's establish procedures, and they say, well, I don't know. I need to figure out who is really controlling these things, who is controlling the information. Okay? And the morale sinks to the lowest level too. So this is really what you want to get to, where the trust level is high, people feel flexible, they care and support each other, closeness is and they mature, and morale is high. These are the guidelines for developing effective teams. Set directions for the team, select the right team members, means have heads with brains. That's very, very important. Get commitment from team members, coordinate their efforts, use power and authority appropriately. I mean, don't really think that because you have a higher positional power, then you can use your authority. No, I think that's not a good idea at all. I mean, if you are a manager who thrives on using your authoritative style all the time, you should not go in the parking lot when it is dark. Okay? So use your informal power, not your formal power, because authority is your formal power, but don't be shy in using your formal power in a formal way, but I suggest only as a last resort. Develop creativity in problem solving, good communication plan, motivate your team members, and enhance trust and morale. Again, the most important thing, and then provide your good team leadership. Enhancing trust and team morale. When you are really trying to do this in a project environment, for example, it is very important to explain them the importance of the job itself. Why is it so important? Why I need to trust you in order to put in your 110% to have a good quality. Promote the benefits of creating a spirit of teamwork. Have a positive reinforcement through recognition and rewards, and ensure that the individual welfare through trust, fairness, and personal and project goals. Make sure that the personal and the project goals are aligned, because most of the time people do what is in their personal best interest. So if you can align the project goals to their personal goals, you're likely to get more out of them. And look after all the drivers and barriers in team building. Some are the constructive team roles and the destructive team roles. And one of the destructive team roles I've always seen people say, no, that won't work. And what you need to figure out is, well, let's just figure out a ways to do things. So you have to come up with all the constructive roles as well. And this is the characteristics of the high performance teams I just came up with. In my books, actually, I used lots of acronyms, which is the purpose, empowerment, relationships, flexibility, optimal productivity, means commitment to high standards, recognition and appreciation, and morale. This is very, very important as an element of trust, means people feel after that enthusiastic, pride, positive attitude, confidence, and optimism. These are the three important dimensions of team leadership for enhancing trust. You need to look after the team member side, project-related things, and the organizational related things. Okay? Let me just share with you some quotes that I really, really like actually. Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's the fundamental principle that holds all relationships. Trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. So do not tinker with trust on trivial issues. Okay, that's very, very important, because once it's broken, it's not very easy to regain. I don't think it is about trusting people. It is about knowing who to trust. I think that's important. Synergy is the bonus that is achieved when things work together harmoniously. And I like Helen Keller, alone we can do so little, and together we can do so much. Let me share with you quickly what are the other webinars. As Kevin said, it's a series of webinars that I am doing. So we had in March 24th, we had it, Analyzing Your Political Landscape, Swimming with Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive, which was very good and a very lively discussions we have. And that is basically using the art of positive politics. I also have a half-day or a one-day workshop on this topic if you like. Managing a multi-generational workforce, we did it on April 21st. Now we are doing today, May 19th, and the next month we'll have Creating Self-Motivated Project Team. Then we take a break for the summer. In September, we have a leader or a manager. The art of balancing both to achieve success, and we are thinking of some other topic. Arts of positive politics, art of influencing without authority, managing cross-culture and virtual teams, but we haven't come up with any schedule. All of these can be presented as a half-day or a one-day workshops as well. And please contact Procept Associates to organize these workshops. And these are other workshops I do. My most popular seminar is the Power, Influence, and Politics that I've been doing for PMI for the last about 15 years. But if some organizations do not have 2 days available, it can be broken down into 2 separate one-day workshops, the art of positive politics and the art of influencing without authority. I will also be doing for PMI and for Procept. I think we can do it anytime you like. Negotiating with confidence, mastering the win-win approach. And this is the Analyzing Your Political Landscape, Swimming with Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. So I think these workshops, we can present keynotes on any of these workshops if your organization is interested in, and we can do the workshops half day, 1 day, or 2 days. So please contact Procept Associates if you feel you can use any of those things at all.
Thank you very much, Vijay.
I just have a little bit more. We still have time, right?
We have time.
Okay. So I thought I should really just share with you enthusiasm. So when you trust people, when you're working, important thing for the managers is trusting people, but still come out and be enthusiastic. And when you talk about enthusiasm, you can only enthuse others if you believe in the last four characters, means IASM. I am sold myself. You cannot convince people, you cannot lead people with conviction if you yourself is not very enthusiastic. And I love ending with Mother Teresa's quote, do not try to do the great things, do the little things with love. Let me end it with a story about trust. So there were three friends. They were working on a project, out of town. They became friends actually while working on the project. And that was wealth, knowledge, and trust. So they had a great time for 3 years working on a project. When the project is finished, it was about time to go their own way. And so they were having a dinner and they were talking to each other and saying, oh my God, we had such a great time. We should stay in touch. We have lots of things in common. But the problem is, how do we find each other? Now, I'm talking about the old days where you did not have the cell phones and all the information and emails. So wealth says, well, that's no problem. If you're lost somewhere, if you think you can't find me, go actually to the banks, to the mint, where all the coins are made. Go to rich people. That's where I can be found. That's where the wealth is. And then the knowledge came and said, well, how do we find you? And knowledge said, that's not a problem. That's easy. Don't feel bad at all about that. You can find me in libraries. You can find me in universities. You can find me in colleges. That's where there are the opportunities to gain lots of knowledge and so on. So then they started asking trust. Oh, how do we find you once you're gone from here? And trust became very emotional and started to cry. And they said, why? What's the problem? Why are you so emotional? And he said, you know what? I love you people so much. But the problem is that once I am gone, it's not very easy to find me. Means that once the trust is broken, it's not very easy to rebuild it. You can, but it requires a lot of effort. So there was one thing I learned from my mom, and she only went to school up to grade 4. She said, do not tinker with trust and respect. Because once they are broken, it's like a thread. Once they're broken, you can join it, but there will always be a knot in it which will keep coming up. And another analogy people give is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can always fix it, but you can always going to see that line in the middle. So I think important thing is for the managers, you must work hard to develop trust and synergy, maintain it by having relationships of the time and doing things on a consistent basis, because that is really what is going to give you the highest productivity. Because people, when you trust them, communication is easy and they will go to their 110% in order to do what you need to do when the push gets to shove. Okay, thank you very much. I think I'd like to stop here and we'll take any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Vijay. Excellent presentation. Okay, everybody, if you have questions, just type them in the questions window or in the chat window. In your web interface, these are for the people attending this event live. On the web interface, you'll see the opportunity to enter questions in the questions window or the chat window. So just go ahead and type them in. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, everybody is eligible to get some professional development credits for attending this session. So please count it towards, if you're a project manager or a business analyst or many other professions, you're able to gather professional development credits for this type of development. You will be able to capture a full hour or one full credit hour for this event. Okay, first question's coming in from Silvana. Sylvana is asking us, oh, she's revising her question. Okay,
Making it tougher for me.
here's the revised question. What if you are working in a poisonous environment where there is no trust between management and workers, or even between different groups of workers? And Sylvana has declined to say where she works, but it sounds like a really rotten place to work.
Yeah,
How do you build trust in those environments, Vijay?
I think that is the question I was thinking of addressing one slide on, that does distrust ever pay off? And to do that, I think you have to be, so I think you should take that half-day webinar, Swimming with Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. That's what we talk about, that some people are sharks. They are there to meet their own personal objectives, even at the cost of organizational objectives. A, how do you identify them? And B, how do you protect yourself from them? But actually what you need to use is, it's like a paranoia. And you need to use a prudent paranoia, which is and what it really means is, paranoia is a constructive suspicion that you have. You say, as you said, you're in a poisonous environment. I think there, in order to make your paranoia more prudent, gather data relentlessly. You should know exactly what is going on, get more information, get all the facts that support your point of view, and so on. Embrace your enemies. Keep your enemies on your side. Trust the shuffler, but not the deck. In other words, you should signal people that you trust, but make sure that you protect yourself from being tricked. And that's very important. Be unpredictable, because when you're too predictable, people can really try to take advantage of you. Be unpredictable, because when people see unexpected behavior, it puts them on their toes as well, and they start wondering, and that may give you an edge sometime. Now, I'm talking about all these negative things, which personally I don't favor too much, but if you're facing that situation, you're facing that situation, and sometimes you have to disregard all the rules. Don't be afraid to go with your instinct, thinking who you can trust and who you cannot trust, rather than just the rules. Be careful in your organization. So I don't know if I have answered your questions properly or not, but these are just some of the thoughts, quick thoughts.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And for those of you who are listening to that answer, the video about how to swim with the sharks without being eaten alive, the video recording of that webinar is available on YouTube. You can search for it on YouTube, and you can just search for Swimming with the Sharks or Swim with the Sharks, Vijay Verma, and you should be able to find it. It's published to the Procept YouTube channel. Okay, I got another question here.
Yes.
This one is from Abdullah.
Yes.
Abdullah says, with us all working from home due to COVID, do you have tips for developing trust and or synergy in a virtual team environment?
Yeah, I think that's, including me, we all are facing that situation. I think the first important thing is to engage people and make them feel comfortable in your interactions. So when you're having a virtual meeting, first important thing is ask them how you're doing and talk a little bit about their personal life and so on, and so that you can establish some kind of a connection very quickly. Okay, and I think that's very, very important. And once you have that, then you need to show what can you bring to the table for them. Remember one of the simple, I've got 3 truths of life. And one of them is that these truths of life, again, I learned from my mom. And one of them is, most people do most of the time what is in their personal best interest. So you have to figure out, instead of saying F him, what's in it for me, say what's in it for them. Always think about that in a virtual environment. How can I help this person get what they actually are after, in terms of information, in terms of process, in terms of motivation, in terms of some other clues or whatever it is. I think that is what you need to do. And another thing is, people support what they create. Instead of telling them on the virtual meetings, this is what I want you to do, this is what I want you to do, make them a part of the creation process. And when they're a part of the creation process, they'll be committed to meeting that as well. So the important thing is establish relationship, even if you do it through a small talk, be consistent and deliver to them something what's in it for them.
Okay, very good.
I don't
Thank
know
you.
if that helps.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have time for one more question. Remember, you can type your questions in the chat window or the questions box. And yes, sorry, Abdullah says, yes, that helps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, here comes our last question. It came in from Samira.
Yes.
Samira says, do trust building strategies change in different cultures? Do I need to consider someone's cultural background?
Very much so. Very, very much so. This is very, very important. It is culturally sensitive. So important thing is to know about their culture, because when you talk about the cultures of the Eastern countries, for example, Eastern cultures are more interested in connections. So they're really more interested in face-to-face talks and more connections rather than just the business talks. And you also have to consider about the genders, about their way of context in communication, whether they think about, high context, low context, long-term thinking, short-term thinking, and so on. So if you have to develop trust, like I think in our culture in North America, we spend, in my opinion, this is my personal opinion, we spend very little time in trying to really do the building trust. We just say these are the things, and I think you are expected to do that, so you should do that. Remember that thing I showed you, the diagram of hope, faith, and trust? This thing. So you can see that you have to, when people meet your expectations, the faith is actually culturally sensitive as well. Some people have certain faith in certain things. Some people don't believe in anything. As long as the things are done, then they move on. So I think, yes, answer your question, it is culturally sensitive, and you should consider and learn all the cultural factors. And when you really connect with their culture, all of a sudden you will see that the relationship becomes a little bit better, and you can really have an opportunity to build trust.
Samira had a follow-up question while you're answering. Samira asks, can you give examples of specific strategies for specific cultures?
For examples, actually, when you talk about the Eastern cultures, it is very important to understand, because they actually, believe they're family oriented. So it's a good idea to talk about the family, how the family values are very important, for example, and you can start building trust. In communication, you can just say that we should be clear, but empathy, for example, and more compassion. I mean, there is a more compassion in some of the Eastern cultures, and I think we learn all about the compassion as we grow older. So I think a little bit of so those are the kind of things you need to learn, because empathy and compassion and clarity, these are the most important things of communication. Because remember that communication is 7% words and 93% is non-verbal. And out of 93%, 38% is the vocal tone and 55% is the body language. And the body language is different in different cultures. So it is very important to know those body languages, so that when you're interacting with them, you connect with their culture, you align with their body language signals that they also understand, and then the communication becomes better and the trust would help as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Vijay. I think we're out of time for today. That was a great session. We really appreciate it. Everybody, remember, this is one in a series of webinars that are running roughly every 2 weeks. Wherever you heard about this webinar, go back and check out the upcoming webinars. There's some by Vijay and by many other really excellent speakers. So look forward to seeing you back on some of our future sessions. Thank you very much, Vijay. Great job.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye for now, everybody.
Bye-bye.